The enrollment terminal blinked twice, processed a corrupted data packet that had been bouncing around the Galactic Military Academy's intake system for 11 days, and quietly reassigned Cadet Chun from Auxiliary Medical Support, Tier 3, into Predator Combat Division, Elite Track. Nobody noticed. That was how it started. Day 1. Predator Hall. 0500 hours. The corridor smelled like hydraulic fluid and adrenaline. 47 cadets lined up in the gray pre-dawn. Kreth warriors with triple-jointed limbs, Vorith heavies whose shoulders barely cleared the doorframe, sullen marksmen with eyes that could track a thermal signature at 4 kilometers. Every species in the room had been selected for physical dominance. Every species in the room was, in the polite language of the Academy intake form, Apex class. And then there was Lily. She stood at a height of 1.62 meters. She weighed 58 kilograms. She had her dark hair pulled into a neat bun, a regulation datapad tucked under one arm, and an expression of complete calm that the sullen to her left, whose people had literally evolved from ambush predators, would later describe as unsettling. Instructor Vale Dreth entered. He was Kreth. 2.4 meters of layered muscle and regenerated scar tissue, a veteran of the Outer Corridor campaigns, and the being responsible for breaking and reshaping the most dangerous soldiers in the known galaxy. He had made a Vorith heavy cry on day 2 of the previous intake. He had ended careers simply by standing close to people and breathing. He walked the line. He stopped in front of Lily. His 4 eyes narrowed. He looked down at his intake manifest. He looked back at her. He opened his mouth. He did not speak. For exactly 4 seconds, which the sullen cadet later swore on his ancestral honor was the longest silence Dreth had ever produced, the instructor simply froze. Then Senior Cadet John Reeves stepped forward from the far end of the line. John was the only other human in the room. He had earned his spot in Predator Division through a now semi-famous series of events at the Helix Station incident, in which he had neutralized a hostile boarding party using a fire suppression line, a cargo magnet, and 17 minutes of what the after-action report described as improvised structural reasoning. He was 23 years old, had a crooked nose from a badly reset fracture, and had been at the academy long enough to recognize when a bureaucratic catastrophe was about to become a social one. "Sir," John said, his voice level, "Cadet Chun is in the right place." Dreth turned very slowly. "Cadet. She is, sir. I checked the manifest myself this morning. Her assignment is legitimate." He paused exactly 1 beat. Provisionally. It was technically a lie. John had checked nothing. He had simply made a rapid calculation. Lily was standing here. She looked like she had chosen to be here. And in John's experience, the humans who looked calmest in the most wrong-seeming situations were almost always the ones you should be very careful about dismissing. Dreth stared at him for a long moment. Then he stared at Lily. "Medical track," he said. It was not quite a question. "Originally, sir," Lily said, "I cross-certified in field trauma, advanced kinetics, close-quarters patient extraction, and weapons familiarization before I applied. I was told the system would sort me appropriately. The system had, in a sense, done exactly that. You are aware," Dreth said carefully, "that this division's washout rate is 61%. I read 73, sir. For non-Kreth cadets." Another silence. "Fall in, Cadet Chun." Week 1. What followed was not what anyone expected, mostly because everyone, including John, had quietly assumed Lily would request a reassignment by the end of the first physical assessment. She did not request a reassignment. The first assessment was a 4-kilometer obstacle course in full kit, through simulated hostile atmosphere. 3 cadets did not finish. Lily finished 9th. The sullen finished 7th. A Vorith heavy finished 2nd. John finished 14th and did not tell anyone how much his legs hurt afterward. What nobody had initially understood about Lily was a thing that was, in retrospect, obvious about humans in general and about Lily specifically. She was adaptive, not just in the motivational poster sense. In the deep, almost unsettling sense that humans had been adapting to hostile environments for so long that it had become structural, cellular, the kind of thing that happened below the threshold of deliberate thought. When the course hit a wall climb that had been calibrated for Kreth upper body strength, Lily did not try to climb it the Kreth way. She studied it for 2 seconds, found the lateral traverse that the designers had included purely as set dressing, and walked across it in 6 steps. When the atmosphere simulation introduced a pressure spike that was supposed to force cadets onto their knees, Lily, who had spent 3 years in high-altitude field trauma rotations, simply breathed through it and kept moving. When a Vorith cadet who had been watching her with barely concealed contempt since day one blocked the final checkpoint and told her she would have to go around, she looked at him for a moment. Then she looked at John, who happened to be just behind her. Then she looked back at the Vorith. "I'm going through," she said. She went through. The details of how she went through were later reviewed on the checkpoint camera by Instructor Dreth, who watched the recording twice and then filed it under training documentation rather than incident report, which told everyone who knew him everything they needed to know about how he had categorized the event. Week 3. John found her in the tactical library at 0200, surrounded by schematics. "You're not sleeping," he said. "Kreth biology requires less sleep than human baseline," Lily said, without looking up. "I'm adjusting my rest cycles to match the cohort, so I'm not losing training hours." John sat down across from her. He looked at the schematics. They were Vorith structural anatomy, joint maps, pressure points, load-bearing assessments. "You're not afraid of any of them," he said. Lily considered this. "I grew up in the emergency ward of a level 4 trauma center," she said. "By the time I was 12, I had assisted in surgeries on 6 different species. I know where everything hurts." She paused. "That tends to reorganize how you see people." John was quiet for a moment. "Dreth is starting to teach around you," he said. "He's adjusting the course load." "I know. That doesn't happen. Humans make people adjust," Lily said, with a small shrug. "We've been doing it since before anyone was paying attention. We just don't usually announce it." Week 6. Final assessment. The scenario was a simulated rescue operation in a collapsed structure, hostile combatants present, one survivor to extract, full-time constraint. It was designed to require a team. It was designed to be, at minimum, difficult for a full Predator-class unit. John and Lily were assigned together. What happened over the next 47 minutes was recorded in its entirety by 7 assessment sensors, reviewed by the Academy's full tactical faculty, and subsequently added to the curriculum as a case study not because of any single extraordinary action, but because of the rhythm of it, the way 2 humans moved through a scenario designed for beings twice their size, treating every constraint as information, every obstacle as a question to be answered rather than a wall to be broken. John handled the 2 combatants they encountered. He did not handle them the way a Kreth or a Vorith would have handled them. He handled them the way someone handles a problem they have already solved in their head, quickly, efficiently, without drama. Lily extracted the survivor with 11 seconds to spare. When they emerged from the structure, Instructor Dreth was standing at the assessment line. Behind him, the rest of the cohort had gathered, which was not protocol and which Dreth had clearly permitted anyway. He looked at both of them for a long moment. "Cadet Chun," he said finally, "the enrollment office contacted me this morning. There appears to have been a paperwork error in your original assignment." Lily met his eyes. "Yes, sir. I'm aware. They want to know if you'd like to be transferred to a more appropriate track." The word appropriate landed the way Dreth had clearly intended it to land, as a question about something much larger than paperwork. Lily's expression did not change. "No, sir," she said. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Dreth held her gaze for another moment. Then, and this was the detail that the sullen cadet would repeat for the rest of his career, at every gathering where the subject of humans came up, Instructor Dreth, veteran of the Outer Corridor campaigns, being who had ended careers by proximity and breathing, nodded. Not the brisk, dismissive nod of a superior acknowledging a subordinate. The slow, deliberate nod of someone recognizing something they had not expected to find. "Fall out, cadets," he said. And that was how Lily Chun stayed in Predator Division. Not because of a paperwork error, but because the paperwork error had simply put her somewhere that, once she arrived, she was never going to leave. Humans were funny that way. They had a habit of belonging exactly where they weren't supposed to.